evening, folks. A bit of a shift in tone here. So, I'm a little disappointed by the discourse that we've had here tonight. I became a gun owner almost to the day 2 years ago. I am about as left-wing politically as you can get, and I'm very proud of that. I'm a member of Rhode Island's LGBT community, and this is the first time I've ever told that to a room full of complete strangers and a camera, so hopefully that gives some idea of how important it is to me to be here today. We have not had a trend of rising gun violence. It has been going down for decades, but we have had a rising trend of violence in this country. We have had a rising trend of hate crimes. We have had a rising trend of violence stoked specifically by hateful ideologies like white nationalism. In response to that, the fastest growing segments of new gun owners are marginalized folks, are members of the queer community, the Black community, and women. The National African American Gun Owners Association has, to my memory, almost increased by an order of magnitude in size over the last few years because of fears of racist violence. You've seen similar phenomena in terms of LGBT-related gun owners and gun groups sprouting like wildflowers. So I do not come to this room from gun culture. I do not come to this room from the Second Amendment community per se, but I know that when I purchased my first firearm, I did the research available to me. I selected a firearm that came with a standard capacity of 15 rounds. Now, I'm sitting here today listening to bills that would render illegal or restricted every firearm that I have selected for my personal safety. I cannot stand for that. I have to come here and voice my opposition to these bills, and I have to comment that when we have Black Lives Matters chapters across the country putting out statements saying that we cannot support the gun control efforts that we're seeing because of the way that it impacts our communities and the way that it impinges on our ability to defend ourselves, something is wrong with the way that we are approaching gun safety. When we are in precisely the moment where the most marginalized among us, according to the statistics, are those who are most fervently seeking out their Second Amendment rights, I question the decision to bring in these draconian laws which will preemptively disarm the most vulnerable among us. If I'm being at my most charitable, I would call these efforts misguided. If I am feeling less charitable, I would call them irresponsible. I oppose magazine limits. I oppose assault weapon bans. I oppose virtually every gun control bill that has been put to this floor today on the grounds that they frankly impact my safety and the safety of my community. And I was disappointed that Senator Oyer has left the room. I'm one of her constituents, and I was happy for her election because of her strong pro-LGBT stances. I simply have to say that if you care about the safety and well-being of my community, then please get out of our way when we're looking to exercise our rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments to this witness? Thank you.
Is that better? Okay. Thank you very much. One of the first things I wanted to say, as far as the bill regarding firearms in schools, I don't know how many of you know who, and I'm sure a lot of people have talked about Parkland, and I don't know how many of you know who Andrew Pollock is or his son Hunter. I have spoken to them. He is actually on the Florida school board. He was appointed there by the governor. He lost his daughter, Meadow Pollock, in the Marjorie Stoneham Douglas High School shooting. Since then, he and his son, along with the governor, have created bipartisan legislation to keep their children safe. I have actually spoken with them and offered to the governor and her administration, he has offered to come and help craft the same legislation that they have down there. Now, some of the talking points I just want to kind of get across here. Not every single teacher is required to carry a firearm. It is completely volunteer. Those who do decide to carry, they go through psychological evaluations, extensive background checks, and they work for many, many, many hours with the local law enforcement. So if there is an active shooter situation, it isn't the wild, wild west and guns aren't ablazing. They know what's going on. They have something prepared. It isn't like everybody is saying. That is absolutely false. And I do want to say something. If there is a concealed carry, if the person who has a concealed carry permit, if they engage someone in a situation, if they lose their life, that is something that they are willing to do. That is something that they know it is a risk. So everything going on as far as bullets are going to be flying and people are going to, it's completely just talking points. I just wanted to get that out here. And that same legislation that they have down here, they have offered the governor and her administration to work with them, and there has been no response. So there's that. Now, I did want to quickly just get through my testimony, which I guess we'll just start. My name is Alan Gibberti. I'm from West Warwick, and I'm the president of the Log Cabin Republicans of Rhode Island. For those of you who don't know, we are the original and largest LGBT conservative and straight allies organization, and we basically support fairness, freedom, and equality for all Americans. The testimony that I gave a few weeks ago before the House Judiciary in regards to very similar gun control bills was cut short, so I wanted to just finish what I had started before. Some of you may know that I'm here to advocate for my community, and what I'm going to say isn't new. Gun control does and it will have deadly consequences for the LGBT community, and the fact that I have to make the same case with the same facts, quite frankly, is disgusting. How anybody can knowingly introduce legislation that will cause more deaths is beyond me. Many people have touted themselves as allies of the LGBT community, and yet here we are with another feckless version of a hate crime law. And here are the statistics. The number of hate crimes committed in the U.S. rose for 2 consecutive years. There's some debate as to what it has for the 3rd year, but it has fallen to 0. Violence against the trans community is real. Last testimony that I gave, we already had the first, we are now up to the 2nd trans person killed this year. The LGBT community is 2 to 3 times more likely to be violently attacked than any other marginalized group in the United States. What you need to understand is that if you're gay or transgender, you simply can't hope that laws are going to protect us, because they won't. We can't rely on more impotent legislation such as hate crime laws and anti-discrimination legislation. All it does is provide a false sense of security. It gets people killed and keeps career politicians employed. What you're doing here today with these bills is just an extension of that. It is nothing short of voting to restrict our ability to equally defend ourselves. That is not equality, it is discrimination. Last April 2018, I asked Representative Jason Knight, when he introduced the assault weapons ban of 2018, I asked him, if I was an 18-year-old transgender woman, how would I defend myself? He replied, here's what I'm saying. It's a hypothetical, it's a real hypothetical, it's a real scenario, it could happen. And all these bills, everything that is here is a policy choice. So my life, the lives of the LGBT community, and any marginalized group who finds themselves the target of frequent violent crime, the fate of our lives lies in a policy choice. It has been almost a year, and I have asked many legislators, why are they putting forward bills that are going to hurt the LGBT community and any other marginalized groups? All I have heard is silence. Why? I'm going to tell you why. Because if you acknowledge that there is a problem with this legislation, that it will indeed leave members of the LGBT community at a deadly disadvantage in an already uneven playing field, it should cause every single one of you to pause and question, when did it become acceptable to trade one set of lives for another? When did it become acceptable to toss the youngest and vulnerable members of our society to the wolves in order to appease the masses? Be cautious of what we do here today, because many, many more people are watching, especially this time around. We should be educating the LGBT community about being responsible gun ownership, not actively disarming us. Armed gays do not get bashed. The shooting at the Pulse nightclub, which many like to talk about, which 49 people lost their lives and 53 others were wounded, was the largest and deadliest attack on the LGBT community. Passage of legislation such as this, which strips our ability to equally defend ourselves, is the next. We will not go back and we will not comply. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this witness?
You're welcome. I think I'm already on. Hi, my name is Jennifer Moffitt. Thank you for hearing me. So I've heard a lot of very inaccurate information all night long, and I obviously don't have time to refute most of them. I think most of you on this panel already know the things that have been said that are inaccurate. I do want to point out something. I so often hear this term common sense. And unfortunately, in order to identify and use common sense, one must use facts, not emotions. And I understand this is a very emotional situation. I have kids that are in school. I actually had a situation just this past year where my daughter called me in a panic because there was a situation at her school. Luckily, they were wonderful at taking care of it efficiently because Warwick actually has very wonderful systems in place already. They've been very proactive above and beyond what's been required. So I understand the emotion. The problem is that you on this panel are required to overlook the emotion and focus on facts. So I'd like to point out one little thing here. I heard earlier somebody commenting that out of 283 active shooter events, only 33 had a armed citizen there who actually stopped it. The problem with that is, based on FBI information, this is straight off the FBI's website, out of those 33, 75% of them were successful. So let's think about this. 98% of mass shootings happen at gun-free zones. If this was not the case, and more of those 283 events, there was an armed citizen available, we could possibly have prevented 214 of those 283. Actually, 214 plus the 33 that were successful. That's what we need to focus on, facts. Because the fact is when an armed citizen is available, they're successful and they stop this. We all wish we could live in a utopian society where bad things don't happen. We all do. But the facts are we don't. Bad things happen because people are evil. Evil people will continue to get the guns and will continue to do bad things. So we have to look at how we prevent them. We prevent them with facts. And that's what we need to focus on. Another thing, I can't quite wrap my head around how everybody uses the Parkland shooting as a way of pushing gun control. It makes no sense. I'm not sure how many people realize this, but there was a gentleman there by the name of Jeff Heinrich who was an off-duty police officer. He was there volunteering, mowing the lawn. He was there when the active shooting happened, but guess what? He couldn't have his gun on him because it's a gun-free zone. So this is an off-duty cop that was not allowed to be armed, but yet, do you know what he did? He ran into the school unarmed anyways. The people who were there to protect the children did not. I think somebody brought up earlier that this particular situation brought up so many problems that, if anything, it encourages to want to provide protection in the schools. They proved that these officers did not have a duty to protect. Well, guess who does have a duty? Me. The parents. The people who are available. That police officer who was off duty. He wanted to and wasn't given the opportunity, and that is shameful. So you want to sit here and talk about common sense? Let's look at all of the common sense statistics that are available on the FBI website that will prove that concealed carry, armed citizens protect us. Gun-free zones do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
My name is Art Drummond. I'm an associate pastor at a Foursquare Gospel Church in Uxbridge, Massachusetts. I live in Smithfield, Rhode Island. I taught high school for 29 years here in the state of Rhode Island, so I have a teaching background before I went into ministry. I've heard a lot of talk tonight, and the buzzword seems to be safety. And there's safety that we can feel, and this safety that is, we're making people safe, or making people feel safe. I really wish that we lived in a safe world. I like butterflies and rainbows, and I know, though, that from the beginning of mankind, and I know Senator Metz, you're familiar with this, that the very first murder was committed when Cain slew his brother. I'm not saying that you were there, and I wasn't there either. But I don't know, and I don't know if it was a rock or a stick that he used. But you see, the problem is that there is evil in the world. And I do believe that God has given us the right to be able to defend ourselves. There's people that are way smarter than I that founded this country, that, as I recall my history correct, the whole Revolutionary War started when the British were going to confiscate arms from the colonials. The fact that they sought to put the Second Amendment in, first of all, they recognized that rights came from God. They said that they're inalienable, and even if a government takes them away, those rights still exist because they don't come from a government, they come from God. And the first one was life, the second was liberty, and then the pursuit of happiness. God has given us the right to defend ourselves and to defend our loved ones, and I actually believe it's an obligation. The Second Amendment, in spite of what you heard with the civics lesson earlier that was given about the Second Amendment, that we have the right to keep arms and bear arms. Bearing means to carry. Look it up in the dictionary, it's there. I know that hasn't been decided in a court of law, but that's what the word says. I have a permit to carry here in the state of Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Utah, which allows me to carry in about 34 other states. I came into the shooting community, the firearms community, about 8 years ago when I felt that my right to defend myself was going to be taken away. I have, in that time, come to recognize that these rights are not something that ought to be considered lightly, just taking them away. First of all, my personal defense, and second of all, personal defense from evil people. I had a home invasion right across the street from me a little over a year ago. 3 people broke in late at night. Your worst nightmare. They were armed. They pistol whipped a couple. By the time and we have a good police department in Smithfield. We really do. But by the time they got there, these guys were gone. You want to talk about magazine capacity, and I want to say, when people say that the only reason somebody wants a high magazine capacity is so that they can kill a lot of people, that's an accusation against me and a lot of other law-abiding citizens. How dare you? You don't know me. Someone comes into my house in the middle of the night. I don't want to be fumbling around trying to make a magazine change. I want to be able to defend my wife, my grandkids if they're staying over with us. And I don't want to be told that I can only have 10 rounds to do that. When evil people do evil things, we have a right to defend ourselves. It's also possible for governments to become evil. And when that happens, the figures are astronomical. I have a book here. It's called Death by Gun Control. It's written by a man by the name of Aaron Zellman. He used to be the head of an organization called Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. And he catalogs, I'm not talking about mass shootings, I'm talking about genocide, and how it began in 9 different countries in just the last century. Those numbers you see on some of the placards that people are carrying around, 272 million people, 9 countries. 9 countries in just the 20th century alone. And it all started with common sense gun control laws, disarming citizens and taking away their right to defend themselves, whether it's against an individual, criminals, or a government. The last thing I want to talk about is schools, because I'm a teacher. I have children that are teachers. And this idea of arming teachers. No one is going to force a teacher to carry a firearm. We can't do that. But people who have firearm permits in this state, I know the background checks that I went through, and I know the training that I have put myself through. I know that I practice on a regular basis. I heard the head of the state police saying that their officers only shoot 100 rounds a year. I shoot double that most every week in practicing. And I'm just an average shooter. To take that ability away, and I heard somebody say this last week at another hearing. When I was growing up, and that was a long time ago, it was right after the Second World War, and we used to have these things called air raid drills. And we'd all run downstairs into the basement. Anybody remember those? Oh, you're about my age, okay. After that came the duck and cover drills, and that was if you saw a bright flash of light, you were supposed to duck and cover under your desk. No one ever told us that if we saw a bright light and ducked and covered under our desk, that would save our lives, that was going to have any useful purpose if an atomic blast went off. We felt safe, and adults at that time had a great way of calming the fears of young people. I think we've done a disservice to young people in stirring up these fears of what could happen. But I'll tell you, the idea of taking away the ability of teachers to conceal a firearm, nobody knows who has them in a school, and that's the way it ought to be. But if you post a sign that says gun-free zone, none of these teachers are armed, you're telling the fox that the hens have no defense. That kind of a ban would have about the same effect as duck and cover would have done for us if an atomic bomb blast had gone off. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for this witness? Thank you very much.
Declaring war on the New World Order, TruthRadioShow.com.